Hello, my beautiful plant people. It's Valerie from Terracotta Treasures. Welcome back to my channel. Today, as you could tell by the title, we're going to be talking about some plants that flower. And plants are absolutely amazing and their foliage is incredible as is, but certain plants offer just a little bit more and they give back these beautiful little rewards known as flowers. And don't get me wrong, almost all plants flower, but it's a little harder sometimes to incorporate that with houseplants. A lot of houseplants are easier to flower than others. A lot of plants that can flower outside, you just can't bring indoors and it'll do the same thing. It won't have the same effect. But there are hundreds, probably thousands of plants that you can flower indoor, but I'm just going to be sharing with you guys 13 today. And you came here for the plants, so let's get started listing these guys off, I guess. So these are not listed in any particular order, but number one on my list is Spathiphyllum, or the peace lily. And this is a low maintenance, really beautiful plant. The foliage is a dark green color, and the flowers are white cupped spathes, and they are just absolutely beautiful. And they can get to about 3 to 4 feet tall, and if you let it anyway. And it requires very low light. It will flower more if you give it more indirect light, never direct sunlight. But it can survive and can kind of thrive in low light conditions. And also, if you have pets, especially cats, maybe this isn't the plant for you. ASPCA actually has it listed as number 1 for the most poisonous plant for cats. So maybe if you have a furry friend, maybe this isn't the plant for you. But it is beautiful. Second on my list is the African violet. And it is one of the most common flowering house plants. And it is absolutely gorgeous. The foliage is, again, a darker green, and it does produce quite a few flowers. It prefers to be in a windowsill that receives quite a bit of bright, indirect sunlight. It doesn't do the best with direct sunlight, and it can tolerate low light as well. It may or may not give you as many flowers, but it'll do fine and it'll survive in low light conditions as well. It does require a special fertilizer though if you are wanting to fertilize it and feed it during growing season. And the soil should be kept moist but not soggy. It does like to be pretty humid. And I would personally water it from the bottom. I only do that just because it helps create a little bit more humidity if you live in a drier climate. But yeah, it is a really simple and easy plant to take care of, and it's gorgeous. Number 3 is Anthurium. It's also known as the lace leaf or the flamingo flower. And these produce beautiful leaf-like flowers. And with proper care, they can actually flower all year long. They love bright, indirect sunlight and can tolerate low light. They'll just produce less flowers. And they like to be kept warm, no colder than 60 degrees, and they like to be kept moist. And these come in quite a few colors. I've seen them most commonly in red, white, pinks. I've even seen a purple one. I really would like a purple one. But anyway, another tangent for a whole nother list. I have too many plants on my wish list. So number 4 on my list is the begonia. And begonias are mostly known for their flowers, but the Rex begonias are known for their foliage, and there are many varieties within that genus, but Rex begonia's foliage, their leaves are just incredibly stunning. Oh my gosh. Definitely on my wish list. But there are actually 3 different classifications of begonias. There are tuberous, fibrous, and rhizomatous. and the fibrous and rhizomatous are the best types to keep as houseplants and are best grown indoors. And they can be kind of tricky to get their watering down and get the humidity, and they're a little more of a just generally tricky plant. They require more care and more careful care, but they are so worth it. So just do a little bit of research on what type of begonia you have, and that might help a little bit in keeping that guy alive, but they're worth it and absolutely gorgeous if you can keep them alive. So number 5 on my list is the orchid. There are 30,000 known species of this plant, and I'm going to be giving some tips and tricks and general care, but each species actually has its own set of care requirements. Some can vary actually quite a bit from one to another. So I'm just going to give you kind of a general rule of thumb here. But they do love light, absolutely love light. They require 12 to 14 hours a day. Indirect though, they don't like direct sunlight most of the time anyway. There are some that do great outdoors in the direct sunlight. And they tend to tolerate drought over excess moisture. So when you water, definitely water thoroughly, but you can let it go for a little while and let it dry out in between waterings. And also the medium or soil that orchids are generally grown in don't offer a whole lot of nutrients to the plant, so this is one that will benefit quite a bit from fertilization during its growing season. I recommend I would say twice a month or so, every other week, every other watering or so. Number 6 is the Calla Lily, and it is very closely related to the peace lily, except this one is a little bit more common as an outdoor plant, but it likes to be shaded, so more so common you would find it on a porch where it has access to direct light but is also shaded for most of the day. And it can very well be grown indoors as long as it's offered quite a bit of bright and direct sunlight. And it likes to be consistently moist but not soggy. And as the blooms start to become less frequent and the flowers start to fall, I would water it less and less, fall back on the watering as the flowers start to fall back, and fertilize it during the growing season, and it should be fine as long as it's brought indoors during the winter and the watering is gradually lessened. It should last for quite a while. Number 7 is the lipstick plant, and this is a little bit of a less common hanging plant, but they're absolutely gorgeous. They bloom late summer to early fall, but they can actually bloom year-round, and they'll bloom a lot better if they're root-bound. They like to be a little more dry than moist, so definitely let them dry out before watering, in between the waterings. And they love bright indirect sunlight, but direct sunlight will burn their leaves. But the more indirect sunlight you give them, the more they will bloom as well. Number 8 is Tradescantia, or more commonly known as Wandering Jew, and this is a gorgeous vining plant. They're known more for their foliage than their flowers, but they do flower. I actually have one. I have a Tradescantia zebrina that has been flowering like crazy for me this past season. And they are small, but they are cute. They're little pink flowers. I might include a little clip of it. But the blooms usually are pink or white, and the Tradescantia grows so very quickly. They're also commonly known as the inch plant because they're said to grow an inch a week, and I would attest to that. They do grow very, very quickly. These plants like to be kept moist, but I like to water these as well from the bottom because they can be prone to stem rot, so I prefer to just water them from the bottom. But as long as they are kept moist, they'll usually be happy, and they like medium to bright indirect sunlight, If they are a variegated version or the tricolor version, they will require a little bit more sunlight, only because they need more sunlight to keep that variegation, to keep that bright coloring. Otherwise, they can do well in low light situations, they just might not be living their best life. Number 9 on my list is the Bromeliad, and there are around 3,000 species and unfortunately about as many ways to care for them as there are varieties. There are a few general principles that remain the same. They're more tolerant to drought than overwatering. They like the higher humidity, and the light kind of depends on the variety. So unfortunately, you kind of have to do your research on exactly what variety of bromeliad you have. But generally, they like bright light. They can dry out in between waterings, and you just kind of have to do a little bit of research, unfortunately, as to which one you have. So number 10 on my list is cacti, and they are absolutely gorgeous to look at on their own. They're actually some of my favorite plants, but they can take up to 30 years and sometimes more to mature and to have their first bloom. And some varieties even actually only have one bloom in their entire lifespan. And I know that this video is for plants that bloom, and that's a lot of commitment for a bloom. They give some of the most amazing, incredible, beautiful flowers in the entire world. I'm definitely including pictures here, but they are just the most amazing and beautiful flowers imaginable. Cacti obviously love light, and they need a lot of light to not only survive, but if you are wanting them to bloom, you're going to have to put them through dormant periods. Number 11 on my list is Impatiens, and Impatiens are common porch plants, but they cannot tolerate frost, which makes them a great house plant. They have very delicate roots, so they need a lighter soil. So for example, a 1-to-1 ratio of peat moss to perlite, and they like to be kept moist. And during their growing seasons, if you are going to fertilize, make sure you're fertilizing lightly, because if you fertilize too much, this will actually cause the foliage to be beautiful and full, but it'll produce less blooms, so you won't have as many flowers. Number 12 on my list is jasmine, and I'm actually choosing a specific variety of jasmine because not all varieties have fragrance. So because of this, number 12 is actually more specifically Jasminum polyanthum. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm choosing it because it has a sweet aroma. So usually during the night it's more fragrant and it has a very beautiful smell. It prefers cooler temps, so it does make it a little bit nicer to have as a houseplant rather than outdoors, but it won't tolerate a frost. And it can actually tolerate up to 4 hours of direct sunlight per day in the late spring to fall and through the growing season. High phosphorus fertilizers will prolong the length of the bloom as well, and these plants can actually have a really long lifespan if cared for properly. So I highly recommend this plant if you are looking for a flowering plant. Last but not least on my list is Schlumbergera. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm talking about Christmas cactus, also Easter and Thanksgiving cacti, and hence their name. They bloom for their holiday, and they are basically hanging branches of flat, glossy green segments of cacti that can actually get as long as 3 feet. And the flowers on the tips can be pink, purple, red, white, yellow. I've even seen some sort of like hybrid mixed colors that are absolutely gorgeous on the tips. But the bloom lasts several days and the blooming period lasts several weeks. And it actually can tolerate more humidity than the average cacti, so it does like to be watered a little bit more. It likes to be kept lightly moist, and especially while in bloom. But during the season where it's not going to be blooming, I would draw back the water just a little bit. And also, while it's in bloom, I would fertilize weekly with a high potassium fertilizer, and that'll also keep your blooms lasting a little bit longer. But that is also a highly recommended flowering houseplant. Absolutely gorgeous. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you've made it to the end. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you enjoy plant content and similar content, go ahead and subscribe. I am trying my best to get a schedule down so that I can post twice a week, but my life is a mess. I am a mess. So I'm trying to be better about it, pretty much is the point here. But comment, let me know what your favorite flowering plant is, whether it be from this list or something else that you have that I didn't mention. I'd love to hear it, and I'd also love to hear any ideas of some stuff that you guys would like to see. But I hope you guys have a great day. Bye, my beautiful plant people.